The great thing about humans in general is we're always improving things. And so entrepreneurs and inventors, and if they follow their curiosity and they follow their passions and they figure something out and then they figure out how to make it better and they're never satisfied. And you need to harness that. In my view, you need to harness that energy primarily on your customers instead of on your competitors. And so I sometimes see companies and even young, small startup companies, entrepreneurs go awry is they start to pay more attention to their competition than they do to their customers. And I think that in big mature industries, that might be a winning approach in some cases, kind of close following. Let other people be the pioneers and go down the blind alleys. There's many things that a new inventive company tries won't work. And so those mistakes and errors and failures do cost real money. And so maybe in a mature industry where growth rates are slow and change is very slow. But as you see in the world more and more, there aren't very many mature industries. Change is happening everywhere. We see it in the automobile industry with self-driving cars, but you could go right down the line of every industry and you would see it.
You made it. Was there a moment you thought, I might not make it?
The riskiest moment for Amazon, Charlie, was at the very, very beginning. I needed to raise $1 million at a certain point. And I ended up giving away 20% of the company for $1 million.
A hell of a deal for somebody.
A lot of people did very well on that deal. But they also took a risk, so they deserved to do very well on that deal. But I had to take 60 meetings to raise $1 million, and I raised it from 22 people at approximately $50,000 a person. And it was nip and tuck whether I was going to be able to raise that money. So the whole thing could have ended before it even started. That was 1995, and the first question every investor asked me was, what's the internet?
Failure and invention are inseparable twins. Everybody wants to be inventive. If you go talk to corporate America or any institution, actually, government agencies and so on, innovation is something to be proud of. People like invention. But the problem is they don't like failure, and you cannot have invention without failure. If you already know it's going to work, it's not an experiment. And only through experimentation can you get real invention. The most important inventions come from trial and error with lots of failure. And the failure is critical, and it's also embarrassing. And so that's why people, when we're kids, we always are doing trial and error, and we're never embarrassed. If you watch a little toddler, and they will try for hours to put a square peg in a round hole, and it never works. But it doesn't keep them from trying. And they try things like that, and that's how they learn. And we all have that when we're little, and then as you get older, somehow it's not as cool as you get older to fail and to fall down. It looks clumsy, and so we get in our grooves, we have a set of expertise and skills, it's kind of a comfort zone, and you have to constantly push yourself to say, no, I don't care about failure. In fact, I say at Amazon, we have to grow the size of our failures as the size of our company grows. We have to make bigger and bigger failures, because otherwise none of our failures will be needle movers. And so I would see it as a very bad sign over the long run if Amazon wasn't making larger and larger failures. And if you do that all along the way, that is going to protect you from ever having to make that big, kind of Hail Mary bet that you sometimes see companies make right before they fail and go out of existence.
The most influential people in my life were my grandparents. And my mother had me when she was 17 years old. She raised me with my grandparents' help, and she was still in high school when she had me. That was not cool in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1964, but she did an incredible job. But I was lucky because I had not just her, but she married my father when I was about 4 years old. He has been a huge influence in my life, but my grandmother and grandfather were like second set of parents for me. And you learn different things from them because they're at a different stage of life and they know different things, they're calm about certain things. It was a huge gift to me. My grandfather had a ranch in Texas, and I spent all my summers there from like age 4 to 16, and he was the most self-reliant person. He did all of his own veterinary work, all the things, and to observe him solve problems and figure out how to do things with no tools and no resources and, very small amounts of money. It was a huge education from an early age. So we were very lucky. One of the things that I know people who have, they don't have great family situations, and sometimes they break that cycle and they are the ones who pull out of it. Those people are the ones I reserve my highest admiration for. As the owner of the Post, I know that at times the Post is going to write stories that are going to make very powerful people very unhappy. And
are you upset if they are writing critical stories about Amazon, which they do?
No, I'm not upset at all. When I first bought the Post in 2013, never. And I would be humiliated to interfere. I would be so embarrassed. I would turn bright red, and it has nothing to do with, I don't even get so far, I just don't want to. For me, it would feel icky. It would feel gross. It would be one of those things when I'm 80 years old, I would be so unhappy with myself if I interfered. Why would I? Yeah. I want that paper to be independent. We would be very naive to believe that we're not going to be criticized. I mean, that's just part of the terrain. You have to accept that. One thing I tell people is if you're going to do anything new or innovative, you have to be willing to be misunderstood. If you can't afford to be misunderstood, then for goodness sake, don't do anything new or innovative. By the way, getting it wrong isn't that bad. That's the other thing. When we make mistakes, and we've made doozies like the Fire Phone and many other things that just didn't work out, we don't have enough time for me to list all of our failed experiments, but the big winners pay for thousands of failed experiments. So you try something like Prime, and it was very expensive at the beginning. It cost us a lot of money, because what happens when you offer a free all-you-can-eat buffet? Who shows up to the buffet first? The heavy eaters. It's scary. It's like, oh my God, did I really say as many prawns as you can eat? Oh. And so that is what happened. But surely we could see the trend lines. We could see that, all kinds of customers were coming and they appreciated that service. My grandparents would take me every summer, starting at age 4, every summer, kind of to give her a break, really, for the whole summer. So I'd be with my grandparents and on their ranch in Cotulla, Texas, which is halfway between San Antonio and Laredo. We lived in Houston, and so we would make the 5-hour drive out to Cotulla. They'd drop me off, spend a couple of days there, then they'd go back to Houston. I'd spend the summer. And I went every day to the ranch with my grandfather to help. Now, a 4-year-old boy on a ranch in South Texas is not a lot of help. But I didn't know that. I thought I was helping, and then by the time I was 16, I actually was helping. So I have, I can suture up a prolapsed cow. I can fix windmills. My grandfather was so resourceful, and that he made his own veterinary needles. He would take a little piece of wire and pound it flat with like a oxyacetylene torch, and then drill a little hole through it. And then we did all of our own veterinary work. Some of the cattle even survived. And so we had great fun out there. We built barns and welded things, and he bought a D6 Caterpillar bulldozer used. It was like 1955 model year for $5,000. It was completely broken. The gears were stripped. And then we spent, a whole summer repairing that. And the first thing we had to do to repair it was build a crane to take the gears out of the transmission. And so, what I learned from watching him was just how resourceful he was. One of the precursors, one of the foundational things to being able to take risk is to have had some kind of support from somebody. You have to have some mentors. You have to have somebody who loves you. These are the kind of things that build up and allow you to kind of, jump off into uncharted terrain and do something new because you know you have a support system of one kind or another. And I certainly did. So for me, I just want to point out that I feel very strongly that I've won a lot of lotteries. Amazon is one of the lotteries that I've won, but I had a big lottery with my parents. My dad is a Cuban immigrant. He came here when he was 16 years old, didn't speak any English. He's a great guy, and my mother had me when she was 17 years old. So she was a pregnant 16-year-old in Albuquerque, New Mexico in high school, which was not cool. And she made it work, and her parents, my grandparents, helped her with that whole thing and made that all work. And if you don't get that kind of support somehow, it doesn't have to be your parents. Sometimes people get lucky, it's a grandparent, or it's a friend, or a family friend, or a teacher. It can be somebody, but you need that. Somebody has to step into your life. And that's a lottery that I suspect a lot of people in this room have also won, just like me. I like to putter in the morning. I get up early. I go to bed early. I get up early. I like to putter in the mornings. I like to read the newspaper. I like to have coffee. I like to have breakfast with my kids before they go to school. So I have my kind of puttering time is very important to me. And so that's why I set my first meeting for 10 o'clock. I like to do my high IQ meetings before lunch. Like anything that's going to be really mentally challenging, that's a 10 o'clock meeting. And because by 5 p.m., I'm like, I can't think about that today. Let's try this again tomorrow at 10 a.m. And so then on sleep, I get 8 hours of sleep. I prioritize it, unless I'm traveling in different time zones. Sometimes it's impossible, but I am very focused on it. And for me, I need 8 hours of sleep. I think better. I have more energy, my mood is better, all these things. I'm taking my Amazon lottery winnings and I'm converting them into reusable rocket vehicles so that we can lower the cost of access to space. Because right now the price of admission to do interesting things in space is just too high. If I look at what Amazon was able to do 20 years ago, we didn't have to build a transportation network. It already existed. That heavy lifting was in place. We didn't have to build a payment system. That heavy lifting had already been done. It was the credit card system. We didn't have to put a computer at every desk. That had already been done too, mostly for playing games, by the way, and so on. So all the pieces of heavy lifting were already in place 20 years ago. And that's why, with $1 million, I could start this company. Today, and then there are even better examples on the internet over the last 20 years. Facebook started in a dorm room. I guarantee you 2 kids cannot build a giant space company in their dorm room. It's impossible. But I want to create the heavy lifting infrastructure, kind of do the hard part, so that the future generation, 2 kids in a dorm room, will be able to create a giant space company. I always tell people, sometimes I get, we'll have a good quarterly conference call or something, and Wall Street will like our quarterly results, and people will stop me and say, congratulations on your quarter, and I say thank you. But what I'm really thinking is, that quarter was baked 3 years ago. Right now, I'm working on a quarter that's going to reveal itself in 2021 sometime. And that's what you need to be doing. You need to be out sort of, 2 or 3 years in advance. And and then why do I need to make 100 decisions today? If I make like 3 good decisions a day, that's enough.
Take pride in your choices, not your gifts. This is something that I think is super important for young people to understand, and for parents to preach to young people. It's really easy for a talented young person to take pride in their gifts. They can say, I'm really athletic, or I'm really smart, or I'm really good at math. And that's fine. You should celebrate your gifts. You should be happy, but you can't be proud of them because they're gifts after all. They were given to you. What you can be proud of is your choices. How did you decide to use your gifts? Did you study hard? Did you work hard? Did you practice? The people who really excel combine gifts and hard work. And the hard work part is a choice. You get to decide that. And that is something, when you're looking back on your life, you'll be very proud of.